na matatizo yetu kubwa ni kwamba kuna watu wanajiita.
President William Ruto has contradicted and negated his key campaign pledges against external borrowing and quoted the International Monetary Fund, a Bretton Woods institution, for a 55.1 billion shillings facility for his 3.64 trillion budgetary support. The move comes amid ballooning national public debt, an impoverished population coupled by rising cost of living and prices of basic commodities. Currently, the country's economy is saddled with debt, inflation, joblessness, and national pessimism. Following his election, President Ruto has inherited nearly 10 trillion shillings debt from his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta, promising to fix the country's shattered economy. However, his new loan deal with IMF portends a bleak future for taxpayers who will bear the painful conditions pegged to the new IMF loan of a broadened tax base and scrap the fuel subsidy. Broadening the tax base means bringing more hustlers, Ruto's core support base of informal workers, into the tax net majority of whom are in shaky informal economy, living from hand to mouth. Similarly, scrapping fuel subsidies raised prices and led to further inflation, a key election platform President Ruto campaigned against and catapulted him to the helm of power. President Ruto's first budget of 3.64 trillion shillings, contained in the 2022 Budget Review and Outlook paper, is an increase from an earlier estimate of 3.55 trillion shillings and puts pressure on the Kenya Revenue Authority to aggressively collect taxes. Revenues are expected to increase to 2.9 trillion shillings compared to 2.8 trillion shillings given in the 2022 budget policy statements. Most of the new administration's spending, which will begin next July, will be on programs aimed at economic recovery as Kenya tries to shrug off the negative effects of the Ukrainian war, COVID-19, and droughts. This will be an opportunity for Ruto, through his Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, to actualize some of the campaign promises they made, including lifting millions of the poor from poverty by implementing policies that favor those at the bottom of the pyramid. Income tax, which comprises employer and employee contributions, was increased from 1.18 trillion shillings to 1.2 trillion shillings, a sign that the government anticipates better job market fortunes. Excess duty has also been revised upwards to 352.7 billion shillings from 346.9 billion shillings, following inflation adjustment on this tax head, popularly known as the sin tax. Treasury currently anticipates increased excise tax revenue from alcoholic beverages, cigarettes, fruit juice, sodas, bottled water, cosmetics, and other beauty products. The medium-term revenue strategy, which is currently being developed, will direct tax reforms, improve the tax system, and increase revenue over the medium term, according to the Treasury. During his campaign, Ruto made the economy the main focus, promising Kenyans a radical transformation if he won. But in politics, promises and reality are two different things. Implementing a manifesto will require money and new economic structures, and even face resistance from defendants of the status quo. During his campaigns, Ruto said borrowing money to run the government will not be an option for his government. He stated that some projects will have to be delayed and others postponed as there is not much money to continue working on them. Ruto said that trips abroad by politicians were slowed down to reduce how money was used on things that are not much of a priority, and he does not wish to keep on borrowing. However, going against his words, Ruto recently took a 55.1 billion shillings loan that was approved by the International Monetary Fund. This followed the fourth review of the 288 billion shillings 38-month extended credit facility and the extended fund facility arrangements with Kenya. This brings the country's cumulative disbursements under the EFF/ECF arrangements to about 203.84 billion shillings. In October, 3.02 trillion shillings of the country's growing external debt rose to 4.35 trillion shillings, without proportion growing by 2.3 percentage points from 2021 and an increase of 3.4 percentage points compared to 2020. Kenya's National Treasury data shows the proportion of external debt denominated in the euro stood at 18.8% in the same month, 4.1% in yen, 5.3% in yuan, and 2.3% in pound sterling, while currencies accounted for 0.2% of the total external debt. Overall, the national government's external debt stock increased by 24.78 billion shillings from 4,334.79 billion shillings in September 2022 to 4,359.57 billion shillings in October 2022. This was attributed to disbursements made during the month and exchange rate depreciation. This comes at a time the Kenyan shilling has continued to weaken against the greenback due to the raises of lending rates by the US Federal Reserve, causing an outflow of dollars from the global market into the US, which heavily affected developing countries. This month, the dollar was trading at a mean of 122.94 shillings compared to a mean of 113.17 shillings at the start of the year, a rise of 8.6%, increasing the country's external debt load. Reporting for the Informa, Catherine Chalo.